That's sad, man, honestly.
Hello, True Crime Intel viewers. I'm Williams, and today I'm bringing you one of the most disturbing and heartbreaking stories I have ever come across. Imagine this: three young children left alone in an apartment, living in a place so filthy and full of neglect that it is hard to believe it could be real. And all the while, their mother, Kelly Marie Bryant, posted cheerful updates online, as if everything were perfectly fine. What you are about to hear is not just a story of neglect. It is a tale of deliberate abandonment, deception, and a system that failed to protect those who needed help the most. Stay with me as I take you step by step through every detail of this shocking case. And if you find this story important, please hit the like button and subscribe to True Crime Intel for more true stories like this one.
Now to Michigan, where police say a mother left her three kids home alone for several years. We're learning more about what was found inside that home as the mother faces charges.
It all started on February 14, 2025, when a welfare check was requested at a small apartment on Lydia Lane in Pontiac, Michigan. A worried landlord had grown concerned because he had not seen Kelly in several months. When the authorities arrived, what they found inside defied belief. In a cramped, dark apartment, three children were discovered living in conditions that no one should ever have to endure. There was garbage piled up to nearly 4 feet high in several rooms, mold growing on every surface, and human waste scattered throughout the living spaces. The air itself seemed heavy with neglect and despair. The children, a 15-year-old boy, a 13-year-old girl, and a 12-year-old girl, were found in a state of extreme neglect. They were dressed in soiled, worn-out clothes. Their hair was matted with dirt, and even their toenails had grown long and thick from the lack of care. The two girls in particular appeared to have been confined indoors for so long that they rarely ever left the apartment. They slept on discarded pizza boxes, while their older brother lay on a thin mattress on the floor, trying his best to keep his siblings as safe as possible under such dire circumstances. I want you to imagine what it would be like to be in their shoes, to wake up every day in a place where clean water, proper food, and a safe space were completely absent. These children were not just victims of misfortune, they were victims of a deliberate act of neglect. Their basic human needs were ignored, and they were forced to survive in an environment that was both physically and emotionally damaging. This is a situation that should never have happened. Yet for years, these children were forced to live in a world where they were completely forgotten by the one person who was supposed to care for them. Kelly, their mother, had once been seen as a woman with potential, someone who could have had a bright future. But between 2020 and 2021, she made a decision that would forever change the lives of her children. She moved out of the family home, taking one of her children with her, and left the other three behind. This was not a mistake or an accident. It was a deliberate decision. For years, she abandoned her children, leaving them to fend for themselves in an apartment that slowly turned into a place of decay and despair. What makes this case even more disturbing is the stark contrast between what was happening behind closed doors and the image Kelly showed to the world online. On social media, Kelly posted cheerful photos and videos of herself, celebrating life as if nothing were wrong. Her own profile was filled with images of smiling faces, fun outings, and even posts about giving food to people in need. One of her posts boldly stated that she was helping others by giving away food.
Put that in the shed. This one? Yeah.
But behind that cheerful facade was a reality that was anything but cheerful. While she was busy curating the perfect online image, her children were suffering in silence. They were left without the basic necessities of life, forced to survive on sporadic food deliveries that were never enough to sustain them. Essential items like toilet paper, hygiene products, and even enough nutritious food were never provided to them. At one point, the children had to survive on a single loaf of bread for several days, a meager attempt at feeding growing children that left them weak and frightened. Kelly had also imposed strict and cruel rules on her children. She ordered them never to leave the apartment and not to answer the door. This command instilled in them a deep, paralyzing fear of the outside world. The 15-year-old, who had taken on a protective role, admitted that he had only left the apartment on 2 rare occasions. One time he stepped outside just to touch the grass, and another time he went out just to check the mail. These small acts of rebellion were not signs of a normal, happy life. They were desperate attempts to experience the world beyond the walls of a prison-like home where fear and neglect reigned every day. Now let me tell you about the father of these children, a man whose life has been marked by loss, hardship, and a constant struggle to reconnect with his kids. Information about the father was gathered from various social media sources, where his details and struggles emerged through his own posts and comments from people who followed his story. This father has faced many challenges over the years. Between 2014 and 2017, he was incarcerated, which meant that for a long time he could not be there for his children at all. Even after his release, he tried very hard to rebuild a relationship with them, but fate was not on his side. The last time he saw his children in person was in 2021, a day that now stands as a painful memory of what could have been. In 2022, he took the brave step of filing for legal visitation. A written agreement was even set up that would allow him to see his children regularly, to share in their lives and offer the love and support that every child deserves. However, Kelly never showed up in court to sign the necessary documents. Instead, from 2022 until now, she repeatedly filed personal protection orders against him. These orders not only cut him off from his children, but also made it nearly impossible for him to reconnect with them. Despite all these setbacks, the father has always done his best to care for his children. He has been paying child support since he was just 17 years old, when he first became a parent. Even though he has struggled to see his children, he has never wavered in his commitment to their well-being. For years, he believed that his children were living with Kelly in a normal household, never suspecting the harsh reality that awaited them. The truth was revealed only when the authorities finally intervened on February 14, 2025. In a cruel twist of fate, the last time the father and Kelly spoke was on February 13, 2025, a day before the horrifying discovery was made. There is also another layer to this family story. Besides the 3 children who were found living in neglect, there is a 4th child, a 9-year-old boy, who lives with the father. This boy is not biologically related to the 3 neglected children, yet his story is intertwined with theirs. To add to the complexity, the biological father of the 15-year-old has been in federal prison for as long as the child can remember. This leaves the father we are talking about as the only stable male figure in their lives, a fact that makes his struggle even more poignant. Despite his constant efforts to do what is right, the legal barriers and Kelly's deliberate actions have kept him apart from the children he loves so dearly. At this point, I want to ask you something. If you find stories like this important, if you believe every child deserves a safe and loving home, please hit that like button and subscribe to True Crime Intel. Your support helps bring these stories to light and sparks the kind of conversation that is needed to create real change. Now, while we are unraveling this heartbreaking tale, another mystery emerges that has left many people asking a very important question. Where was her father? Kelly often posted on social media about how close she was to her own dad. In several posts, she called him her MVP and even shared screenshots of private conversations with him. As recently as 2017, Kelly described her father as a strong presence in her life, someone she could talk to about everything. But this raised some serious questions among those following the case. If Kelly was so close to her father, did she ever mention the awful conditions in which her children were living? If she told him everything, how could he have been unaware that his grandchildren were living in filth? Did he know and simply ignore it? Or did Kelly consciously keep that part of her life a secret from him? These are questions that many people are still trying to answer. The mystery of her father's role in this tragedy only deepens the sense of betrayal and confusion surrounding Kelly's actions. As the investigation unfolded, the legal system had no choice but to take drastic action. On February 20th, 2025, Kelly was formally arraigned on 3 counts of first-degree child abuse. These charges were severe, carrying the possibility of a life sentence. The court's response was swift and unequivocal. The presiding judge, Rhonda M. Folks Gross set an unprecedented cash bond of $250 million. This staggering amount was not chosen lightly. It was meant to reflect the immense risk Kelly posed, not only to her own children, but to the community at large. The judge expressed deep concern that Kelly might try to intimidate her children or flee if released, and the bond was set as a powerful statement against the neglect that had been allowed to continue for so long. The community's reaction to this case was immediate and intense. News of the children's living conditions spread like wildfire, and soon people from all over began to speak out. Social media platforms were filled with posts, comments, and messages of shock, anger, and sorrow. People could not believe that a mother who projected an image of normalcy and even kindness on her social media could allow such horror to exist behind closed doors. The contrast between the cheerful images Kelly shared online and the grim reality of her children's suffering was too stark to ignore. Many wondered how someone with the means to care for her children could choose to leave them in a state of utter neglect. In the days following the discovery, the community rallied together to support the children. Neighbors, local organizations, and even strangers began to offer help in any way they could. Donations of clothes, food, and money poured in, and child advocacy groups quickly mobilized to ensure that the children received the medical care, psychological counseling, and educational support they so desperately needed. The outpouring of support was a bright light in an otherwise dark story, a sign that even in the midst of deep neglect, there are people willing to stand up for what is right.
In the meantime, the Oakland County Sheriff's Department is taking donations for the teens pulled out of the house by CPS, who are now staying with a relative. One question that remains is how 3 of these children were able to fall through the cracks with family members, neighbors, teachers, and so many others not being able to tell that something was clearly wrong. Regardless, one organization already trying to help is the Ennis Center for Children.
Ennis Center for Children are going to donate clothes, hats, shoes, anything else that we can provide to them to help. We're just hoping that we can help our children in any way that we can, that we can provide services and just uplift our children and make sure our children are safe and have a safe space to go to.
This case forces us to ask hard questions about the systems in place to protect vulnerable children. How did these children go unnoticed for so long? Why did the school system, which should have been a safety net, fail to report their prolonged absence? And what about the community, neighbors, teachers, and friends? Why did no one step in until it was too late? These questions are not easy to answer, but they are questions that we must all consider if we are to prevent tragedies like this in the future. Some might say that Kelly's actions were the result of personal failings or hidden struggles. But when you look at the facts, it becomes clear that this was not a case of a parent simply overwhelmed by hardship. Kelly had the resources, the means, and the opportunity to care for her children. Yet she made a choice, a deliberate choice, to abandon them. And while she was busy maintaining a perfect online image, her children were left to suffer in silence. This deliberate act of neglect is one of the most chilling aspects of the case, and it leaves us with a deep sense of betrayal and anger. I want you to take a moment and imagine the daily reality for these children. Every day they woke up in a home that reeked of decay and despair. They were isolated, cut off from the world, and forced to endure conditions that no child should ever have to face. Their basic needs were met only in the most minimal ways, and every day was a struggle for survival. And through all of this, the one person who was supposed to care for them was nowhere to be found, hidden behind a facade of normalcy on social media. The father, whose details we learned from social media, had been fighting a losing battle for years. His struggle to reconnect with his children, hindered by repeated legal setbacks and Kelly's deliberate actions, is a story of heartbreak and perseverance. He paid child support from the time he was just 17, and he tried again and again to secure legal visitation. Yet every time his attempts were blocked by the actions of Kelly. It is a story that shows just how complicated family dynamics can be, and it leaves us wondering, how can a parent be so determined to care for their children, yet be so completely shut out by the very person who is supposed to be their guardian? Now, if you believe that every child deserves a safe and loving home, please do hit that like button and subscribe to True Crime Intel. Your support is crucial in helping us spread the word about these important issues and in sparking the conversations that can lead to change. As the legal proceedings continue, each day brings new details and more questions. The courtroom has become the center of a fierce battle over what should happen next. Kelly now faces 3 counts of first-degree child abuse, and every piece of evidence seems to build an even more overwhelming picture of neglect. The decision to set a $250 million cash bond was a powerful signal from the court, a message that, when it comes to the safety of children, there is no room for compromise. Legal experts, community leaders, and ordinary citizens alike are watching the case closely, and many are calling for swift and severe justice. Beyond the legal battle, this case has sparked a broader debate about how society monitors and intervenes in cases of neglect. How can we ensure that children are protected before it is too late? What changes need to be made in our schools, our neighborhoods, and our legal systems to catch these warning signs early? These are questions that do not have simple answers, but they are questions that we must ask if we are to learn from this tragedy. The emotional toll of this case is something that words can barely describe. Imagine the fear and isolation these children must have felt each day. Imagine the heartbreak of a father who has done everything in his power to care for his children, yet is forced to watch them suffer from afar due to legal barriers and deliberate neglect. And then consider the chilling contradiction of a mother who, on one hand, projects an image of caring and generosity online, and on the other, leaves her children to face a daily nightmare of neglect. This story leaves us with many unanswered questions. Why did Kelly decide to abandon her children? Was there something deeper behind her actions, or was it simply a deliberate choice to neglect her responsibilities? And perhaps most haunting of all, would she have ever come back for her children if she had not been caught? These lingering questions only add to the sorrow and mystery of this case. We are also left to wonder about the role of Kelly's own father. As I mentioned earlier, Kelly often spoke about her dad on social media, describing him as her MVP and showing off private conversations that painted a picture of a close and supportive relationship. But this raises serious questions. If she was so close to her father, did she ever share with him the truth about her children's living conditions? If she told him everything, how could he have been unaware that his grandchildren were living in such filth? Did he know and choose to ignore it? Or did Kelly deliberately keep that part of her life hidden from him? These questions have fueled much debate online, and they only deepen the mystery surrounding Kelly's actions and the environment in which these children suffered. As we reach the end of this story, I want to leave you with a final thought. This case is not just about one mother's neglect or one father's struggle. It is a stark reminder of how easily a system designed to protect can fail the most vulnerable among us. It is a call to action, a reminder that we all have a role to play in ensuring that every child receives the care and attention they deserve. Whether it is a neighbor who notices something amiss, a teacher who sees a pattern of absenteeism, or a community member who speaks out, every action counts. Before I sign off, I want to ask you once again, if this story has moved you, if it has made you think about the importance of protecting our children, please hit that like button and subscribe to True Crime Intel. Your support not only helps spread awareness about cases like this, but it also fuels the conversation that can lead to real change. As we close, think about the legacy of this tragedy. Every detail, the piled up garbage, the mold, the children's matted hair, the constant fear, tells a story of neglect that could have been prevented. The fact that these children were left to suffer for so long is not just a failure on the part of one person. It is a failure of an entire system that was meant to protect them. It is a failure that calls for change, for vigilance, and for a renewed commitment to ensuring that every child is safe. I leave you with this final message. Never stop asking questions. Never stop speaking out when something doesn't seem right. Every child deserves a safe, nurturing environment. Every parent must be held accountable for their actions, and every community must work together to catch the warning signs before it is too late. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I'm Williams, and you have been watching True Crime Intel. Please take care of yourselves, look out for one another, and always remember, every child deserves to be safe, every voice matters, and every story of neglect is a call for change. Let's work together to build a future where no child is ever left behind. Stay vigilant, stay kind, and most importantly, stay true to what is right.